Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing today? Looks like everybody's starting to pop in right now. Awesome. I hope everybody's been doing pretty well. We've just finished up lesson 1 yesterday, and you guys should be seeing that I added homework number 1 into Shobi, and I made the due date. I actually made it tomorrow at 9 o'clock. 9 p.m. that is. So I did that because I was supposed to put it in yesterday. I forgot. My bad. So I gave you guys an extra day. We're going to go into lesson 2 today. Just the first page. We'll work on the second page tomorrow. And then the homework I will make due on Monday at 9 p.m., which I may have already added on there. I don't want to go through Shobi and start revealing names to the public, though. So, your nap was interrupted by me? Sorry. So, I don't know if you guys have any questions for me before I get started. As I do always, I try to delay a little bit at the beginning just in case if some people are stuck watching those ads. Otherwise, I will get started on this. Again, if anybody's having trouble with the stream, like if it's too blurry or anything like that, just let me know. I changed it yesterday because there were a couple of students that were saying that they couldn't load the video because the HD quality was too strong. So I weakened it a little bit. You guys should see that the connection is, I believe, 480p right now. Oh, actually, we have the option today. So you can go as strong as 540 or you can go lower if it's... So it's not too bad at 540. Maybe I might play it at 540 more often. Some of you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's okay. I don't understand how you guys sleep until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You guys are all nuts. It's probably because you're staying up till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to start right off with the warm-up question, and you will notice there's not a lot that we're going to do today. You're going to have a couple triangles here that you guys did with Miss Randolph last year. I'm just going to show you guys how it ties into this year, but we're not going to really be solving any of these problems until tomorrow when we get to this back page. So I'm going to start off with the warm-up, something that we did earlier this year. This is actually an equation of a circle. However, we can't solve this equation unless we use a process that you guys know as completing the square or the plus blank method. But in order to complete the square, what we need to do is we have to find the missing c value for not only the x's, but also the y's. So I'm going to walk through the process. It will probably come back for most of you guys, but we haven't done completing the square in a bit, so it's a good review question. So I'm going to start off just the x values, and we have to try to figure out the c value for those x's in order for us to be able to factor it as a perfect square. And that's why they call it completing the square. We also have to do it for the y values. So what I'm doing is I'm just rewriting those y's, but I also have to put in the blank space so we can figure out the c value for that. And then on the other side, we have a 27 there. But what we need to do is we have to add in those blanks on the opposite side as well, because in algebra, whatever you do on one side, you have to do it to the other. So I have to add on the x blank, and I also have to add on the y blank. Yeah, Sierra, stop by, because I think if I could work one-on-one with you, you'll feel a little bit better with what we did yesterday. Now, after we get to this part, you guys have to do completing the square. So I'm just going to put down a bubble, because when you do completing the square, it's a perfect square. So that means the bubbles have to be the same. So I could write out 2 bubbles, but I'm just going to write it down once because it's going to be the same and it's going to be squared. Okay. So we know these are the x values, so that's going to be the first part of the bubble. Now what we have to try to do is we have to try to figure out this piece right here. And there was a formula for doing it. And I showed you a shortcut earlier this year to figuring out what that number is, and I'm going to show you guys it again. In order to figure out that number, what you're going to do is just take that -10 and you're going to divide it by 2. So you're just going to chop it in half. So if you chop it in half, it's going to become -5. We now know the bubble for the x. But what we have to do is figure out what the blank is. Well, in order to figure out the blank, we're just doing this next step down here. This next step tells us that we had -5 squared. So if you do -5 squared, that's -5 times -5, which is 25. That is the first blank. So what we're doing is we're just kind of taking that middle number b, and I'll write it off to the side because you guys did it as a formula in the past, and I showed it to you as the shortcut this year. You guys did a formula known as the b value divided by 2, and then you squared it. That's exactly what I just did. I took the b value, which was -10, I divided it by 2, and I got -5, and then I squared it to get this 25 up here. Okay, so I'm going to run through the same steps for the y values, and we also have to make sure that whatever you do to one side, it was that 25, we have to do it to the other side as well. Good, I'm glad you remember these. So now if I go to the other side, again, I'm going to have a bubble, and I know it's got to be squared because both bubbles are going to be the same. In this case, we have the y values. So now this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the b value. So again, I'm just using this formula over here. It's the same formula. And I'm going to divide that 24 by 2, which would give us 12. And in this case, it's a positive 12 because it was a positive 24. Now, if I want to figure out the blank, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to square that 12. And if we were to do 12 times 12, that is just going to be 144. Again, whatever you do to one side, you have to do it to the other. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add all those numbers on the right side. So if I add those numbers on the right side, just because I don't feel like doing mental math right now, we got 27 plus 25 plus 144, and that's going to bring us down to 196. We now have an equation of a circle. Now, fortunately for you guys, you're not going to be taking the Regents in June, so you don't have to have this formula memorized for June. But the circle formula that I gave you guys earlier this year was x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that's the equation of a circle. This question is asking us to find the center, and it's asking us to find the radius. Holy cow. My wife had to leave to go to the store, so we put Archie in the cage. He's 2 floors up, and I hear him echoing all the way down here. So he is very, very upset he's in his cage. So in order to find the center is used by the point HK. Well, we know what HK is because if you look right above, it's the numbers that are just inside the parentheses. We just have to remember when you're taking it out of that parenthesis, you have to change it to the opposite. So it's not -5 positive 12, it's +5 negative 12. The other thing that we need to do is find the radius. And if you guys are looking for the radius, notice that I am only asking you to find the r value. I'm not asking you to find r squared. This value over here says it's r squared. So 196 is r squared. So what we need to do is get rid of the squared, and the opposite of squaring something is the square root. So we have to do the square root of 196. And if we were to do the square root of 196, that is equal to 14. So hopefully that's kind of coming back to you guys. It was a good review for this lesson because we're going to talk a little bit more about circles. More specifically, we're going to talk about something called the unit circle, which is what I'll do right in this next question. But just want to see and make sure that you guys remember these because they're not going to go away. I haven't done it yet with you guys, but what I'll have to do is give you a packet. I'll probably do it in 2 weeks. It's going to be the Q3 benchmark review. Obviously, I'm not going to give you a benchmark, but the homework for the week is going to be a 15 question benchmark stuff that we did throughout the whole year. So I'll do like we did for the last benchmark review. I'll sit down and I'll do some review questions with you, and then I'll give you an assignment that the questions are almost going to be identical to those. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go into today's lesson. So this should be new for everybody because when Miss Randolph taught you guys about some of the stuff that we're going to be doing today, she didn't use this thing called the unit circle. Unit circle is very, very, very self-explanatory. So we call it a unit circle because the radius of the circle is 1 unit. So that's why they just call it the unit circle, because the radius is always going to be 1. And if you look at the little circle drawing that I provided you guys, there is a little line that is going through here, and it is saying that the hypotenuse is 1. So it doesn't matter where I draw that line in this circle, it is always going to be 1. I could draw it anywhere I want, and it's always going to be that 1. And you guys can see on the X and Y axis, it's also only 1 unit. Like if we come up here, this is 0, 1, so that means we went up 1 unit. We went to the left 1 unit, so it should be -1. We went down 1 unit, and so on and so on and so on. The hypotenuse, the radius, is always going to be 1. Okay? So that's very, very, very important for what we're going to be doing for the next couple of days in our lessons. So underneath it says, we use the unit circle to locate coordinate points that lie on the unit circle at different angles. So even though I drew in all those lines, kind of like what we did in the lesson the other days, these angles are not going to be the same. These are all going to be different angles. So even though the hypotenuse is going to be the same when I go to draw on the triangles, even though the radius is the same in all of them, the angles are going to be different. And the way we're going to figure out what the angles are is using some special right triangles that you guys did in geometry last year with Miss Randolph. So there's 2 special right triangles that you guys were given. The one on the left was known as a 45-45-90 triangle. So 45-45-90 was one triangle you guys were given. And the other triangle you guys were given was a 30-60-90. Okay. I don't know if that's supposed to represent cheese or Doritos, but I'm glad you are here, Javon. So what we're going to do is we have to figure out those missing sides of these triangles, and I'm going to write down what Miss Randolph told you those missing sides were. You guys may not remember this. I'm going to show you guys how we get the answers that they want for the unit circle. So you guys were told back in the day when you had a 45-45-90, this was known as a 1, 1, radical 2 triangle. And I don't know if that looks familiar to you guys or not, but that's how Mrs. Randolph taught it last year. The second triangle, which is a 30-60-90 triangle, is very, very similar, except the numbers are going to be different just by a little bit on the outside. This is going to be 1 radical, I'm sorry, I'm writing it backwards. That was my bad. based on the angles, I was writing it backwards. This one is going to be known as a 1, 2, radical 3 triangle. Oh, no, I was writing it the same. Oh, my gosh. I mixed these ones both up. This one's radical 3. I was writing it right the first time. I mixed it up. So, Sierra, the big reason why this is the most confusing thing in geometry is because you guys were just given the numbers and you were told that you were supposed to memorize them. In my eyes, this should not be a geometry lesson because this is known as trig functions. So it should not, in my eyes, it should not be in trig at all, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finding solutions to trig functions. Sine, cosine, tangent. You guys learned the whole Silver Creek teachers, the SCT, and then you had your I don't know. Miss Randolph taught it differently than I teach it, but once we get to that, I'll show you guys more with it. The difference is Miss Randolph taught you guys these numbers, and she didn't go more in detail with it because she knew that's what I would be doing with you guys in Algebra 2. So our goal is trying to make these triangles part of the unit circle. We want them to be part of the unit circle. So in order to make them part of the unit circle, that means we have to make the hypotenuse equal to 1. So this right here needs to be 1. And the only way we can change radical 2 into 1 is by dividing it by something. We would have to divide it by itself. And that would be equal to 1. So again, you guys did a little bit of this last year. She just didn't go too crazy with it. It'll make more sense when we go to day 2 and we start working with the unit circle. These are just kind of brief questions that I'm going over with you guys right now. Just showing you guys proportions. Because when you guys worked with a triangle, especially with proportions, whatever you do with one side, you have to do with all the sides. So if we divided the first one by radical 2, that means we have to divide everything by radical 2. So if we were to put this in the unit circle up top, these would be the technical sides. And there's many shortcuts when we go to do these. And I'll tell you guys more about that tomorrow and when we start going into the lessons next week. This stuff is just an introduction. So if you're still confused with today, it's okay. I'm going to go into a lot more with it. Now, if I go over to the right side, it's the same thing. They want the hypotenuse to be equivalent to 1. Well, in this case, the hypotenuse is 2. Well, we don't want it to be 2. We want it to be 1. So that means the only way we can solve this is if we divide that 2 by itself. So if I do 2 divided by 2, that does change it to 1. So now this triangle would be part of the unit circle because we have to make it in common. We want it to be one unit because it will make stuff easier for us to solve. Again, whatever you do to one side of the triangle, you have to do to all the sides. So I have to divide this bottom by 2, and I'll have to divide the right side by 2 as well. So in this case, the new sides of our triangle are going to be represented by 1, 1/2, and radical 3 over 2. All of those numbers are going to coincide with the trig functions that you guys worked with last year. So again, there are shortcuts for solving this. I just have to show you where they come from. I'll show you again tomorrow where they come from in this picture because there's a lot of right triangles that we're going to be solving for on this page. I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm going to do a couple in each quadrant to show you guys how to find them exactly. And then I'm going to have to show you guys how to do it when you don't have the unit circle. So overall, I think you guys are going to feel, like I've been saying, much more comfortable with this during tomorrow's lesson. And then you'll have the opportunity to check out the homework and go from there. Okay. So as of tonight, I do not want you to even try attempting homework number 2 because right now you're not going to be able to solve them because I haven't gone into detail on how to solve these. So for this homework, don't worry about it. It is only one page. I'm telling you guys I'm making the due date for 9 p.m. on Monday. So when I go over it with you guys tomorrow, you'll have plenty of time to get your opportunity to go through and solve them. Okay? So as far as that goes, that is my lesson today. So it is a very short lesson today. It's, again, trying to do that introduction. I'm going to go back to homework number 1 because I know not everybody was here for me going over this homework. I told you guys that on this homework, you did not have to do 2 D, E, and F. And you also did not have to do 3C and 3D. So as far as that goes, make sure you're crossing them off. If you did not do them yesterday, take a screenshot of it right now so you know which ones that you are crossing off. But that's all I got, unless you guys have some other questions for me. Yeah. I got one question for Javon, if Javon is still in here. Javon, I want to know if your stream right now can run at 540. Can you try to see if it's going to run at 540 for you? Because 540 is a little less blurrier for me to save the videos and upload them to YouTube. And if you're able to watch it live on 540, that would be a little bit easier for everybody that goes to YouTube to watch. Yeah, Sierra, these can be a lot easier when we go to do it if we were in person. But I promise you, I'm going to break it down so it's going to be a lot more easier for you tomorrow as well. Okay? But again, that's all I got. I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything else for me. I don't know if Javon, usually when you run at lower streams on your phone, it's a little bit more delayed. So if Javon doesn't answer me, I'll just shoot him a message later. All right. So if you guys got nothing else for me, I'm going to end it there. I hope you guys have a great evening, and stop by Zoom tomorrow if you guys have some homework questions. Make sure you're getting in your homeworks if you have zeros. I know some of you guys sent them to me last night and today. I just haven't gone in and graded them yet. Maybe I'll get an opportunity to do it right now. But I'm going to go check on Archie because it sounds like there's an attacker in the house with how loud he is barking right now. So I will catch you guys all later. Peace.